Good evening, you're watching Super 6 here on India Today. I'm Akshita Nandagopal, and this evening, the top 6 stories of the day coming your way. Our focus first will be on the showdown over the Waqf Amendment Bill. Next week is when we will be seeing that bill being brought into Parliament, and amid that, an attempt by opposition parties to kind of rally together against the bill. That's why today in the Tamil Nadu Assembly, you had Chief Minister M.K. Stalin bringing in a resolution against the Waqf Amendment Bill, thereby becoming the latest party of the India bloc to take a very clear stand and ensure it's fully opposed in his state. What do the numbers look like in Parliament, especially with some of BJP's own allies right now kind of unclear on their stand? We'll be breaking that down for you. I'm Akshita Nandagopal. The latest rallying point for the opposition is the Waqf Amendment Bill, as the India bloc is upping the ante just ahead of the bill being brought into Parliament next week. Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.K. Stalin today brought in a resolution against the Waqf Amendment Bill in the Tamil Nadu Assembly, calling the bill an attack on the Muslim community. He introduced a resolution that was passed by the Assembly and interestingly also backed by the AIADMK. Why is that interesting? Because the AIADMK is reportedly in talks with the BJP for an alliance. Didn't stop them from taking a stand against the Waqf Bill. The BJP is expected staged to walk out as their 4 MLAs left the Assembly in protest over the resolution. But first, before we break down for you the politics behind the Waqf Bill, listen in to what Chief Minister Stalin said in the Assembly today.
சிறுபான்மையின இஸ்லாமிய சமுதாய மக்களுக்கு கடுமையான பாதிப்புகளை ஏற்படுத்தும் வகையில் 1995 ஆண்டின் வக்ஃப் சட்டத்தினை திருத்துவதற்கு கடந்த 2024 ஆண்டு ஆகஸ்ட் மாதம் ஒன்றிய அரசு மக்களவையில் அறிமுகம் செய்துள்ள வக்ஃப் வாரிய திருத்த சட்ட முன்வடிவினை வக்ஃப் அமெண்ட்மெண்ட் பில் 2024 முழுமையாக திரும்பப் பெற வேண்டும் என்று ஒன்றிய அரசை இப்பேரவை வலியுறுத்துகிறது என்ற தீர்மானத்தை நான் முன்மொழிந்து அமைகிறேன். மாநில வக்ஃப் வாரியங்களில் 2 முஸ்லீம் அல்லாத உறுப்பினர்களை சேர்க்க வேண்டும் என்று இந்த சட்டம் கட்டாயப்படுத்துகிறது. இது முஸ்லிம்களின் மத நிர்வாகத்தில் அரசு தலையிடுவதாகும். வக்ஃப் சொத்துக்களை பதிவு செய்யும் முன் மாவட்ட ஆட்சியை சரிபார்க்க வேண்டும் என்று இந்த சட்டம் கூறுகிறது. இது அரசு இந்த சொத்துக்களை கைப்பற்றுவதற்கான வாய்ப்பை உருவாக்குவதாக முஸ்லிம்கள் அச்சப்படுகிறார்கள்.
So interestingly, the DMK is the latest India bloc party to make their stand clear on the Waqf Amendment Bill. Just yesterday, you had RJD's Lalu Yadav and Tejaswi attending a protest called by the All India Muslim Personal Law Board in Patna to make public their opposition to the bill. Important considering the upcoming elections in Bihar in a few months from now. And it's put really the other parties, part of the NDA, in a bit of a spot in Bihar, which we'll talk about. Tejaswi even gave a rallying call for Muslims on the issue of Waqf.
हम लोग पूरे मजबूती के साथ आप सब लोगों के साथ खड़े हैं. ये तानाशाही जिस प्रकार से सरकार चला रही है, देश को तोड़ने का काम कर रही है, लोकतंत्र को खत्म करने का प्रयास किया जा रहा है. किसी भी कीमत पर हम लोगों का प्रयास है कि ये बिल पास ना हो. अगर एक होकर के हम लोग लड़े तो इंशाअल्लाह हम लोगों की जीत तय है.
Okay, let's bring in Pramod Madhav and Maushmi Singh for the latest updates on this. Pramod, to you first, and what really played out in the Tamil Nadu Assembly. It was expected, of course, that the DMK's resolution would be passed through. But what was also surprising was the AIADMK taking a stand against the bill. Effectively, this means that in Tamil Nadu, the only party that's for the Waqf Amendment Bill is the BJP.
It absolutely is, Akshita. For this week alone, AIADMK has given us multiple surprises, and today also it was the same. You mentioned it was Vanadi Srinivasan, the BJP MLA, who rose and spoke, and she said that whatever has happened has occurred as per the constitution. The union government elected by the people went by the constitution. It listened to the people, and only then this amendment was brought in. However, the chief minister was saying that the Muslims, the minorities, did not ask for any amendments, and in a way trying to bring non-Muslims into this particular the board is actually kind of diluting it, and it will cause a lot of issues to the minorities and Muslims. And it turned out to be a huge debate with the BJP walking out. However, the bill was the resolution was passed in the assembly unanimously, Akshita.
Okay, let's also bring in Maushmi Singh for more details on this. The fact that we're seeing, Maushmi, more and more of the India Bloc parties speaking out, passing resolutions, being a part of the protests, has this been some sort of a movement? Is this a decided strategy by the India Bloc?
See, clearly, in the backdrop of, the certain sections of the Muslim outfits, not attending iftar parties of NDA allies from Chirag Paswan to Nitish Kumar. We saw boycotts by many Muslim organizations who said that this is the doublespeak of the NDA. And in fact, the allies of the BJP are siding with the BJP on the Waqf bill. So there has been a certain sort of backlash as far as, registering the dissent by sections of the Muslim community is concerned. And we've seen that the Saugate Modi perhaps is being seen as a reach out and as an outreach to the Muslim community at large. So there is a lot of politics brewing over it, and that's one reason we see, Akshita, that the India Bloc allies are stepping up the game and expressing their solidarity, participating in protests by the Muslim organizations, even as we can say that the Waqf Amendment Bill will see the light of the day post-Eid. So that has also been timed by the Modi government. We'll see that bill being, passed or discussed in the House in the next week.
Okay, so clearly the Modi government timing the bill to post-Eid. The opposition parties timing their protests to pre-Eid, and that itself tells you why really this kind of a stand is being taken and why there's so much focus on the Waqf Amendment Bill right now. Thank you, Pramod. Thank you, Maushmi, for joining us with those details. For the BJP right now, with these opposition parties taking a stand, could that mean trouble? We'll talk about the numbers in a bit, but first take a look at who stands where. Now, parties for, obviously, the BJP is there, and then you have also the Shiv Sena in that list. Why is it so short? We'll talk about the other allies of the NDA in just a bit. Parties against, it's a long list. All of the India Bloc and several others like the YSRCP, the AIADMK, the BRS, who aren't a part of the India Bloc, have also made their stand clear on the issue of the Waqf Amendment Bill. Some of these parties, like YSRCP, for example, usually back the BJP on several contentious legislative issues in Parliament. On this, they've made their stand clear. What about those who haven't really made their stand clear? You'll see the list of parties here are all BJP allies. There's a question mark over them. Not that they're going to oppose the bill, but will they abstain is the question. TDP, because of course, the Muslim vote bank that they cater to in Andhra Pradesh, has been, in fact, taking a very cagey stand on this issue. The JDU and the LJP. It's interesting to note that these two parties haven't really taken a stand right now, and that's, mind you, because elections are around the corner in Bihar. We're a few months away from it. Both the JDU and the LJP have, in fact, quite a strong vote bank, a Muslim vote bank, which will get affected if they make their stand public on the issue. NCP has expressed concerns over the Waqf bill. Now, with changes being brought in after the committee sat down and thought about it, we'll have to see whether the TDP and NCP are on board or not. But the biggest concern is JDU and LJP. And the BJP, while talking to them, is also facing this alliance conundrum because they need these parties to continue to cater to their vote bank for the upcoming election. So it'll be interesting to see what stand they actually take. We'll be, of course, getting you those numbers also, what this means translated to numbers. But here's first a look at all the political reactions that have come in on Waqf.
Looks like DMK is in a hurry to set a narrative based on religion, based on language, based on everything. Why the parties who are the members of the JPC is not challenging Waqf in the judiciary? That's what the bigger question is. Why there is a need and a rush to pass a resolution in the assembly? What DMK had foreseen, which is detrimental to the minorities, is still not clear. So rather than giving a solution, trying to instigate people and keep the issue burning living for vote bank politics is highly condemnable.
அரசியலமைப்பு சட்டத்தின்படிதான் தேர்ந்தெடுக்கப்பட்ட மக்கள் அரசுகள் ஆட்சி நடத்த வேண்டும். அது மத்திய அரசாக இருந்தாலும் மாநில அரசாக இருந்தாலும் அரசியலமைப்பு சட்டம் ஒரு குடிமகனுக்கு கொடுத்திருக்கக்கூடிய அத்தனை உரிமைகளையும் கட்டாயம் பின்பற்றியே ஆக வேண்டும். அதில் எந்த மாற்றமும் இல்லை. அப்படி இருக்கின்ற பொழுது மத ரீதியான கருத்து சுதந்திரம் என்பது இந்த நாட்டில் இருக்கக்கூடிய அத்தனை மக்களுக்கு கொடுத்திருந்தாலும்
वक्फ के नाम पर कम्युनल ब्लैकमेलिंग के धंधे से होशियार रहने की जरूरत है. क्योंकि कुछ लोगों की आदत हो गई है कि पूरे वक्फ के सिस्टम को या वक्फ के एक्ट को उन्होंने जो है वो आसमानी किताब बना दिया है और कह दिया टच मी नॉट, छुई मुई है, अगर छुएगे तो जल जाओगे। और संसद का ये कानून है, संसद का ये एक्ट है और संसद से ही उसका सुधार होगा। आज जो है नरेंद्र मोदी जी है जो निर्णय देश हित में है, समाज के हित में है, संविधान के हित में है, उससे न वो पीछे हटने वाले हैं, न उसमें कोई तरह का परिवर्तन होगा। और वक्फ जो सुधार का बिल है वो संसद में पास होगा, उसे कोई रोक नहीं सकता।
The fundamental rights of the people is involved in this, and the WAF bill itself has changed so many times. It's not the first time it is changing. So without going into the merits of it, just opposing for the sake of political reason. It's a political reason they are opposing it. Even Karnataka has opposed it for their vote bank. So that will not stand the test of the water. Anyhow, it is going to be debated and passed in the parliament next week.
எனவே ஒரு வகையிலே இஸ்லாமியர்களை எல்லாம் இஸ்லாமிய சொத்துக்கள் இன்றைக்கு பாதுகாக்கப்பட வேண்டும் என்பதற்காகத்தான் 1995லேயும் 2013 அந்த சட்டங்கள் கொண்டு வரப்பட்டன. ஆனால் இன்றைக்கு 115 திருத்தங்கள் மூலமாக பல்வேறு திருத்தங்களை கொண்டு வந்து அந்த சட்டத்தை நீர்த்து போக செய்கின்ற அளவுக்கு இஸ்லாமிய மக்களுடைய உரிமைகளை எல்லாம் இன்றைக்கு எடுத்துக்கொள்கின்ற அளவுக்கு பறித்துக் கொள்கின்ற அளவுக்கு இந்த சட்டம் கொண்டு வரப்பட்டிருக்கிறது.
So with the party stance now clear, some of them a little uncertain, what does that really mean for the BJP? Will the Waqf bill still stand the test of parliament? Let's take a look quickly at the numbers. 543 strong Lok Sabha, in which of course the NDA right now is at 293, the India bloc at 238. Simple majority is all that's needed for the Waqf amendment bill, considering it's not really a constitutional amendment. But having said that, they need 271 essentially. So when you look at it at 293, it seems easy enough. But here's where the challenge actually lies. Now, and we mentioned several of those parties with regards to JDU, TDP, LJP, NCP. Now, if these parties choose to abstain, we don't know yet which way they're going to go. Unlikely they'll abstain, but if they choose to abstain, you see all of the numbers there at 34. What really happens then? Well, you see the numbers then coming down, and because of the same, you will see that the NDA strength will be at 259 if those parties abstain. Then there's a question mark of what really can happen. Will the NDA have enough numbers? Will the BJP have enough numbers to go ahead and ensure it's passed? Well, because it's a simple majority, the bill will still get passed. So even if all of these parties abstain, which is also unlikely, by the way, because the BJP will reach out to the likes of TDP and NCP and ensure they're on board. If that happens, it will be smooth sailing. Even if they all choose to abstain because of the optics involved, it will still not be a problem. But what about in the Rajya Sabha? In the Rajya Sabha, the India bloc's numbers are obviously slightly better than what it is in the Lok Sabha. So if you break that down, 125 is NDA, 88 is the India bloc, others is at 23. Again, here the simple majority is 118. Let me again remind you, not a constitutional amendment, so it's a simple majority. At 118, the NDA government has those numbers. But remember, again, if we consider the JDU, TDP and NCP here, there's a question mark. With those 9 seats, will there still be a problem? The number comes then to 116. Just a bit short, really, of, in fact, the simple majority. But having said that, the India bloc is way behind at 88. Others will play a crucial factor here. So we'll see really how that plays out. Again, these are scenarios if their allies choose to abstain. But the bill will still get passed because, quite simply, you will need those numbers to cobble up together. So we'll see how really this plays out. Doesn't look like there will be much of a test really in Parliament, despite the kind of stand that political parties are taking right now. And you see this wave of opposition to the Waqf Amendment Bill. Remember that this bill was something that was introduced already in Parliament a few months ago in August. Then it was, of course, recommended to a committee which the government said they're okay with. What are the changes that the government, that the JPC in this particular bill actually recommended? There were a few tweaks made. For example, that the Waqf councils will have at least 2 non-Muslim members. This is something that was proposed earlier. It's something the committee has agreed to restrict that at 2, to have 2 non-Muslim members. Muslim women will be a part of the Waqf board. This is one clause that almost every party is on board with, which is great to see, considering women weren't allowed to be a part of the Waqf board before this. A state-nominated officer will determine if a property is Waqf or not. So that regulation will still be there, which is what the Waqf Amendment Bill is all about, that the board can't just go ahead and clutch any amount of land and claim it's Waqf. They want someone to be gatekeeping that. A state-nominated officer will do that. Now, no retrospective effect of law if the property is registered. A lot of the Waqf property isn't registered. In this particular case, that's why this step has been taken, saying if it's registered, there's no problem whatsoever. Now, the Waqf claim on government land, that can also be scrutinized. Another very important point, considering, of course, that the Waqf board has laid claim to several government properties. It's something that now can be scrutinized. Let's move that forward as well to the next point, which is provision for a separate board for Aga Khanis and for the Bohra community. So in that case, there'll be a separate board that's set up with more representation of these sub-communities. Now, the Waqf boards must also ensure that all property details are uploaded online. So that's a clear condition that's been put forth. If you look at the amendment bill, which was originally introduced versus what really the JPC has brought in, a few tweaks here and there, that's made all opposition parties' terms and conditions also being considered, their dissent notes also being considered. All right, let's cut across to big breaking news that's coming in. Home Minister Amit Shah, speaking in Lok Sabha on the Immigration of Foreigners Bill, has lashed out at the Bengal government, saying infiltrators, Rohingyas, are entering through Bengal and spreading across the country. Amit Shah, while speaking on the same, said that infiltration will also stop when BJP wins Bengal. Bengal, remember, is going to polls next year. Amid this attack on the Mamata government, when Amit Shah said that the Mamata government is protecting infiltrators and that infiltrators are being given voter IDs and Aadhaar in Bengal, the TMC also staged a walkout from the Lok Sabha while, in fact, Amit Shah was speaking. We're going to get you that statement from Amit Shah in Lok Sabha and tell you exactly what he said, but clearly Home Minister Amit Shah not mincing his words while attacking the Trinamool Congress government, while attacking the Mamata government, pinning the blame on the TMC for accommodating infiltrators, saying the infiltration crisis across the country right now is because the Bengal government, is because the Mamata government allows the infiltrations to happen along the Bengal-Bangladesh border. Now, even as we're getting you these details, and we're going to be getting you a reaction that, in fact, Amit Shah has given what exactly he said in the Lok Sabha. Even as he's attacked the Mamata government, the Trinamool Congress, remember, staged a walkout amid this. And that, in fact, led to an even more fiercer attack from Amit Shah. Amit Shah has said if infiltrators are entering India through West Bengal, who really is responsible? He's also said that the Bengal government must hand over land to complete border fencing, alleging that it's because of no cooperation, insubordination from the Mamata government that complete border fencing along with the Bengal-Bangladesh border is not being done. Amit Shah has also alleged that border security has been compromised because of the stubborn stand that's been taken by the Bengal government and because infiltrators are being accommodated repeatedly by the Mamata government. He says that the routes have been exposed before, that despite that, Aadhaar cards, voter IDs are being issued to infiltrators, to Rohingyas who are entering into Bengal. Now, according to Amit Shah, he's listed out details, in fact, saying that 450 kilometers of fencing has been put on hold because the Bengal government, according to him, protects infiltrators. So Home Minister Amit Shah lashing out at the Mamata government, alleging that it's because of lack of coordination, cooperation from the Mamata government that border fencing is not complete, that security agencies are struggling to grapple and contain the infiltrator crisis, and also he alleges that infiltrators are being accommodated by the Trinamool Congress in Bengal. In what was clearly also a political taunt at the TMC, you have in fact Amit Shah saying very clearly that if the BJP and when the BJP comes to power in Bengal, the infiltration crisis will come to an end. Remember that Bengal goes to polls in just in fact some months from now. Next year, 2026, is when elections are scheduled to take place in Bengal. So amid that, you're seeing this fierce attack from Home Minister Amit Shah. The TMC staging a walkout even as Amit Shah fired this attack at the Mamta government. And he's also said that the Trinamool Congress can't handle the truth, which is why they staged that walkout. Before we get you more details and that statement from Amit Shah, let me bring in Maushmi Singh for more details. And we're seeing, Maushmi, right now, a no-holds-barred attack by Amit Shah at the Trinamool Congress. It even, we understand, prompted a walkout by the TMC MPs.
The TMC has been opposing this bill from the start. Even as the government has the numbers, there has been stiff opposition by certain parties in the opposition, saying that this entire bill has ulterior motives and is meant to divide the society. And that's one reason that you see that the Home Minister, categorically pointing out to the hypocrisy of the Trinamool Congress, thereby saying that this is a very contentious bill that will in fact ensure the safety and security, internal security of India. And on the other hand, the Trinamool Congress is playing to vote bank politics, and that's why the walkout.
Okay, so clearly the TMC miffed over the attack from Amit Shah. And even as the Home Minister was speaking, of course, about the Immigration and Foreigners Bill, you had this targeted, pointed attack on this particular issue of Bengal border fencing, saying that the state government isn't cooperating. It's not the first time, Maushmi, we've seen this back and forth really between the Home Ministry and the Bengal government. This is a charge that Amit Shah has leveled before against the Bengal government, to which Mamta has categorically reacted, saying it's not true.
Absolutely, Akshata. The BJP and the Trinamool Congress have been locked in a very bitter battle over the situation of the border situation in West Bengal. And clearly, whereas the Home Ministry is with Amit Shah, he has repeatedly pointed out that the paramilitary forces are facing an uphill task, in fact, securing the border, because they are not receiving any cooperation from the West Bengal government. And we've seen, as the government has pointed out, a lot of infiltration on the border. That's because of the non-cooperation of the Trinamool Congress government. And on the other hand, the Trinamool Congress has hit back. And that's why, when this was expected, that as Amit Shah pointed out and blamed the Trinamool Congress, the Trinamool Congress MPs got up and registered their protest and staged a walkout.
Okay, so the TMC is staging a walkout over this particular issue. We're going to get you that statement from Amit Shah in just a few moments from now, where he's spoken, in fact, on the infiltration along the Bengal-Bangladesh border, alleging that the reason it's happening is because of the Mamta government. We're going to get you those details in just a bit. We're getting you details of Amit Shah's all-out attack at the Mamta government over the infiltration crisis, blaming the Mamta government for infiltrators entering into Bengal, saying they're being accommodated. Listen in.
मान्यवर, हमारी बांग्लादेश के सटी हुई सीमा, अब सुनिए भाई, हमारी बांग्लादेश से सटी हुई सीमा 2216 किलोमीटर है। उसमें से 1653 किलोमीटर बाढ़ बन चुका है, बाढ़ के पास वाला रोड भी बन चुका है और चौकियां भी बन चुकी है। शेष फेंसिंग की लंबाई है 563 किलोमीटर। 563 किलोमीटर सीमा आज भी खुली है और शेष फेंसिंग जो 563 किलोमीटर है उसमें 112 किलोमीटर फेंसिंग ऐसी है, बॉर्डर ऐसी है जिसमें बॉर्डर फेंसिंग व्यवहारू नहीं, नाले हैं, नदियां हैं, ऊंची नीची पहाड़ियां हैं, जहां 112 किलोमीटर में फेंसिंग हो ही नहीं सकता, और 450 किलोमीटर जहां फेंसिंग होता है वहां बाकी है। अब मैं वो बताना चाहता हूं कि क्यों बाकी है। ये 450 किलोमीटर के लिए मान्यवर मैंने डीओ लेटर लिखकर 10 रिमाइंडर करे हैं, बंगाल सरकार भूमि नहीं देती। मान्यवर, 450 किलोमीटर के लिए गृह सचिव बंगाल के मुख्य सचिव के साथ 7 मीटिंग करे, ये भूमि नहीं देते हैं। मान्यवर, जहां फेंसिंग लगाने जाते हैं, सत्ताधारी पार्टी का कैडर आकर हुड़दंग करता है, धार्मिक नारे लगाता है। और मान्यवर, मैं कहना चाहता हूं कि ये 450 किलोमीटर फेंसिंग रुकी है तो केवल और केवल बंगाल सरकार की दया की दृष्टि घुसपैठियों के पर जो है, इसके कारण। और मान्यवर, इससे आगे ये 450 किलोमीटर शायद ये भाषण सुनकर ममता जी भूमि दे भी दे तो हम खत्म कर देंगे, फिर भी 112 किलोमीटर खुली सीमा रहती है। मान्यवर, जब आप 2000 किलोमीटर बाढ़ बना देते हो और 112 किलोमीटर नहीं बनाते हो, तो कई बार तो ये 2000 किलोमीटर के कोई मायने नहीं। आदमी को घुसने के लिए कितनी जगह चाहिए मान्यवर। तो 112 किलोमीटर जो नदी है, नाले हैं, एक कठिन भौगोलिक परिस्थिति है, वहां से लोग आते हैं। ये सवाल हमें करते हैं, अभी भी किया कि रोहिंग्या दिल्ली तक आ गए, आपके नाक के नीचे आया। मान्यवर, ये बांग्लादेशी घुसपैठे हो या रोहिंग्याज हो जो घुस कर आते हैं, पहले असम से भी आते थे जब कांग्रेस की सरकार, अब बंगाल से आते हैं टीएमसी की सरकार, घुस कर आते हैं। इनको आधार कार्ड दादा कौन देता है? नागरिक कहां के बने हैं? कहां के बने हैं? जितने बांग्लादेशी पकड़े गए 24 परगना जिले का आधार कार्ड और नागरिकता है मान्यवर। और ये जो आप आधार कार्ड इश्यू करते हो, वो आधार कार्ड लेकर, वो वोटर कार्ड लेकर ये दिल्ली आते हैं, आप उनको आधार कार्ड इश्यू न करो, आदमी क्या परिंदा भी पैर नहीं मार पाएगा। और दादा, ये सब चीजें भी लंबे समय चलनी नहीं है। 26 में चुनाव है, बंगाल में कमल खिलेगा और पूरा बंद होगा।
So the TMC clearly taking offense to what the Home Minister just said, and we'll track those political reactions. But let's move on and take you through the latest updates that are coming in on the Judge Cashhall investigation. 5 Delhi cops are under the radar. They've been asked to submit their phones because they were the first responders when that fire broke out on March 14th at the judge's residence. Sources say Justice Yashwant Verma and his personal secretary will also be interrogated soon by the Supreme Court's set-up inquiry panel. Now, there's also been a demand for Justice Verma not to be repatriated to the Allahabad High Court, and bar associations met with the CJI over this, seeking accountability, saying that Justice Verma must be held accountable.
The probe into the cash recovery at High Court Judge Yashwant Verma's residence is intensifying. India Today has exclusively learnt that Justice Verma will be appearing before the Supreme Court appointed 3-member inquiry panel to answer all questions surrounding the cash haul. On Thursday, Delhi Fire Chief deposed before the committee. Sources say that probe is set to be expedited.
Sources have told India Today that during the first 2 days of the inquiry, the judges have gathered several photos and videos from the location, as well as photos and videos that were made by the first responders as part of the evidence in the case. All of this evidence has been handed over to the experts for their analysis. Sources have also indicated to India Today that help from forensic experts is being taken by the inquiry panel to adjudge the authenticity of the photos and videos that are available to them in the form of this evidence.
Meanwhile, the spotlight is also on Justice Yashwant Verma's personal secretary, who allegedly asked Delhi police officials to leave the judge's residence on the night of March 14th after the fire incident. Heat is mounting on Justice Verma. Presidents of Bar Associations of Allahabad, Lucknow bench, Karnataka and Jabalpur bench have written to the Chief Justice of India. They are demanding criminal proceedings against Justice Verma.
We have told the collegium of 5 judges, including the Chief Justice, that 1, the transfer order must be withdrawn. 2nd, no work must be assigned. So they have clarified that no judicial work is assigned to him, but he has just been transferred to Allahabad High Court. And 3rd is that the normal processes of investigation must be taken to its logical end, and the criminal law must be set into motion. And they have assured us that the investigation is on.
The issue is also echoing in the parliament. Congress MP Manish Tiwari has demanded a response from the law minister.
The Chief Justice of India has appointed an in-house inquiry. I think we should respect the process. We should wait for that report. But in the meanwhile, the law minister should come to this house, and the law minister must relate the chronology of events as they have transpired. What actually transpired? What does the government know? Why is the government not making a statement before this?
The factum of recovery money from the High Court judge is really eroding the confidence on judiciary. Sir, judges are also public servants like us. This judge transferred from Delhi High Court to Allahabad High Court. This will not resolve the problem. These high courts, Allahabad High Court, Calcutta High Court, like these courts cannot be the dumping ground.
The cash scandal has also reignited the debate on the NJAC. But government sources say there is no plan to bring back the act that was deemed unconstitutional by the Supreme Court anytime soon. With Nalini Sharma and Shishti Ojha, Bureau Report, India Today.
So in these kind of cases of allegations against a judge, what really does the investigation look like? Who investigates the judge? He can't be investigated by any agency, which is why a Supreme Court panel is set up. I explained to you what really is the process that's followed in such cases. The Indian judiciary has been rocked by a possible corruption scandal, an issue that's long been discussed, but also long been ignored. A judge in the Delhi High Court finds himself in the centre of this debate. Justice Yashwant Verma is no longer with the Delhi High Court, but has been transferred to the Allahabad High Court. Why? Because piles of burnt cash were found at his residence. So what happens if a judge in India is accused of corruption or misconduct? Can they be investigated like other public officials? Well, it's complicated, but not impossible. In the case of a sitting judge, there can be no police probe or any agency investigation. A sitting judge can only be probed via an in-house procedure. So what exactly does that look like? Well, the in-house inquiry process is a mechanism set up by the judiciary to deal with complaints against sitting judges of the Supreme Court or High Courts. It's not a law, but a self-regulatory system created by the Supreme Court in the late 1990s to deal with allegations of misconduct without compromising judicial independence. Before this process, there was really no formal way to handle complaints unless they were serious enough for impeachment in Parliament. But impeachment, again, is a long, of course, political process, and not every complaint warrants that. So in 1997, the Supreme Court, in consultation with senior judges, introduced an internal mechanism, the in-house procedure. So the process of inquiry against a judge goes like this. The CJI-led collegium recommends transfer of the said judge. The collegium then seeks a report from the Chief Justice of the respective court. In this case, for example, it was the Delhi High Court Chief Justice. And then an in-house inquiry will be set up by the collegium if the need arises after the report is submitted. The accused judge is also given a chance to put forward his or her version of events. Their response is sought. Now, if the CJI feels there's misconduct or something's off, the judge can be asked to resign. But if the judge refuses to step down, this Chief Justice of India then moves to the government, asks the government to initiate removal process in Parliament. So the judge can be impeached by a motion passed in Parliament for which you need political consensus. The actual term isn't impeachment, but the process pretty much is that the judge is impeached. However, this current process, as I've just described to you, is quite challenging, and here's why. First, the only recourse to deal with an errant judge is impeachment via Parliament, which is a long-drawn process, as I just showed you. There's also the question of when something like this can happen, only on two instances: proven misbehavior or incapacity. These are the only two grounds for removal of judges. The third is, of course, the fact that the standard for impeachment is right up there. It's high due to political consensus being needed. If you need it to be passed in Parliament, you need all political parties on board. So it's difficult to really push for impeachment. So let's explain to you on whether a sitting judge in the judiciary can actually be removed from office. Well, to maintain the independence of the judiciary, the Constitution under Articles 121 and 211 bars Parliament, bars state legislatures from discussing the conduct of judges. Parliament can, however, consider a motion to impeach a judge according to the procedure laid down in the Judges Inquiry Act of 1968. Judges can also be removed from office through in-house guidelines adopted by the Supreme Court, which I spoke of. But these are for complaints received by the President, Chief Justice of a High Court, or the Chief Justice of India. The process is based on the 1991 K. Veeraswamy judgment, where the Supreme Court said that the judiciary came under the purview of the Prevention of Corruption Act, but to investigate a sitting judge, prior sanction from the CJI was mandatory. So how does Parliament actually deal with this entire impeachment? So let's first explain to you what an impeachment motion is. It can be moved with the backing of 100 Lok Sabha MPs or 50 Rajya Sabha MPs. If admitted, the allegations are investigated by a 3-member judicial committee. If the committee finds merit in the allegations, both houses of Parliament have to pass the motion for the impeachment of the judge by a special majority. Essentially, special majority means the majority of the 2/3 of the members present and voting, which should not be less than half of the total strength of the House. So that many need to be present, and then 2/3 of that strength is the voting number required. So has this ever happened before? Has any judge actually been impeached by Parliament? No judge, interestingly, has ever been impeached. Supreme Court Judge Justice V. Ramaswamy faced impeachment proceedings in 1993, but the motion failed in the Lok Sabha. Then you had Calcutta High Court Judge Soumitra Sen, who resigned in 2011 after one house had passed an impeachment motion against him, and it was going to be taken up in the next house. Now, this entire saga has again led to questions on whether the judiciary should be the judge of the judiciary. The government cannot intervene on this, and there's been a growing chorus for reform on the same. Now, Home Minister Amit Shah has reacted to the entire controversy surrounding Rahul Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi's claim that he's being gagged in Parliament. Amit Shah, while speaking now in the Lok Sabha, claimed that Rahul Gandhi's speeches are being written by NGOs, taking a dig at Rahul Gandhi at a time when the leader of opposition has been claiming that the centre is scared to let him speak in Parliament. Listen in to what the Home Minister said.
इंडी अलायंस के नेता जब से राहुल गांधी बने हैं, सरकार के अधिकृत डेटा की जगह वो एनजीओ का ही डेटा खंगालते हैं। कई बार तो भाषण भी एनजीओ का दिया हुआ करते थे मान्यवर, और कई बार छापा बगैर का संविधान भी लहरा देते हैं। मुझे मालूम नहीं है क्या हुआ है इस देश को।
So let's get you all the details of Rahul Gandhi's claim that he's being gagged inside Parliament, that he's not being allowed to speak. He's the leader of opposition, and Rahul Gandhi has repeated that allegation, saying that essentially they're scared and so they're not letting him speak. The BJP, on the other hand, released a video of the leader of opposition greeting his sister, Priyanka Gandhi, fellow Congress MP within the Sansad, claiming Rahul Gandhi violated parliamentary decorum. This is that video in which Rahul Gandhi is seen entering Parliament and then pinching Priyanka's cheeks in a form of greeting. He was pulled up by the Speaker for this, and the BJP said he is resorting to unparliamentary behavior inside the Lok Sabha. But Rahul Gandhi, meanwhile, today once again said he's not being allowed to speak, and saying he'll never be allowed to speak because he claims that the government is afraid of him. Let's get you all those reactions.
In 0 hour today, will they be allowed today? I don't know what they're scared of. Sir, you should say this on camera, sir, please.
एक लोकतंत्र के संवैधानिक पद पर बैठे हुए एक व्यक्ति, उनके पद का उल्लेख हुआ और उस व्यक्ति को बाद में बोलने का अवसर नहीं मिला। अभी भी वो जैसे कि हमने कहा कि उनके बयान में कोई विशेष घटना का उल्लेख नहीं है.
We've seen this happen a number of times. Like even last time when the House got adjourned, both the houses got adjourned. Nobody knew the reason why. In this particular case, for the Speaker to come out and read a statement, which is, I think, which was probably prepared by the Bharatiya Janata Party, was so unfortunate. And I think after every time you make a charge, there should be a right to respond. And he's a leader of opposition. He has every right to respond. You cannot just read a statement and just adjourn the House. So what is happening is unfortunate. What is also happening is we're seeing how the Bharatiya Janata Party continues to play with constitutional positions, continues to hold power over constitutional positions.
भारतीय जनता पार्टी के सोशल मीडिया का इंचार्ज एक भाई अपने बहन के प्रति प्यार जता रहा है, उस वीडियो को निकाल के प्रियंका गांधी और राहुल गांधी की वीडियो को निकाल के और लोकसभा अध्यक्ष के बयान से जोड़ के उसको मुद्दा बना रहा है. क्या लोकसभा अध्यक्ष ने उस घटना का जिक्र किया? भाई बहन के प्यार को भी अगर आपको घटिया सोच के चश्मे से देखनी है तो इसका तो कोई इलाज नहीं है.
Okay, let's move on to the other big stories of the day. Salman Khan, the superstar, took time to interact with the media in Mumbai and for the first time spoke on the issue of the threats to his life and how his security has been beefed up amid multiple threats from the Bishnoi gang. Here's what he said about the same.
Superstar Salman Khan has for the first time spoken on the multiple death threats that he has received from the Lawrence Bishnoi gang. Ahead of the release of Sikandar, Salman Khan met the media and opened up about his heightened security. The Bollywood star mentioned how his movement has been restricted amid the death threats from gangster Lawrence Bishnoi. Salman said that now his regular days are spent shuttling between work and home and no detours are allowed. I cannot do anything about it. So I go from Galaxy, shoot and then to Galaxy. No detours, he said while talking about the intensive security around him. He added that moving with so many people becomes a problem sometimes. The Bollywood star added that he's okay with the security when he is with the press, but it cramps his style when he's alone. Addressing the constant threats, he also told the media, and I quote, "Bhagwan Allah sab un par hai. Jitni umar likhi hai, utni likhi hai. Bas yehi hai." Salman Khan's security was beefed up after two men claiming to be from the Bishnoi gang had opened fire outside his Mumbai flat in April last year. Mumbai police later claimed to have also discovered a plot by miscreants to kill the actor at his Panvel farmhouse near Mumbai. In October, after political leader Baba Siddiqui's death, which too was claimed to be a Bishnoi gang act, Salman's security was further increased. Apart from getting X and Z plus security, CCTV cameras were also kept around his Bandra home to keep a check on any suspicious movement. A bulletproof glass was also added on his balcony to further protect him and his family. Lawrence Bishnoi has been sending multiple death threats to Salman Khan over the years, over the 1998 Black Bug shooting case. Entertainment Bureau, India Today.
That's all we have time for in this edition of Super 6. Thanks very much for tuning in.